ChangeSmith is honored to have been selected by LeadingAge Virginia to speak on the topic of healthy leadership.
It's great to be here. Normally, we're used to actually being in person and having that back and forth with everybody. But in this time of the pandemic, we've come used to using Zoom, and we're going to try to use Zoom here and get through this content and give you some good ideas. But that all said, remember, we're coming from our home offices, and there may be a couple glitches here and there, like, the door opening when one of our kids come in and we have to shush them away, or other things.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some work being done around our house and in our neighborhood, so we've got some trucks going by.
Yeah, and speaking of trucks, we have that line of traffic outside my window trying to fill up on gas during this, gas shortage that we saw. So let's try to drive through this and see where we can get.
That sounds great. Let's do it.
All right, man.
ChangeSmith is an organizational health company that supports client needs related to change, culture, and leadership through the provision of consulting, training, facilitation, coaching, and team coaching services. We help leaders to enable a more remarkable experience for people because we believe that people having a more remarkable experience produce better and more sustainable business outcomes. Few other activities will seem more worthy of the effort of leaders and more impactful in the lives of people than making an organization healthy. Think about it for a moment. Think about how it feels when a real friend is there for you, or about how it feels when an effective teacher or coach believes in you, or about how it feels when a parent loves you without conditions, or about how it feels when a supervisor trusts you implicitly. If we can agree that the first three are norms, then why does it seem like an employee having the implicit trust of their boss, their manager, or their supervisor is the exception rather than the norm? When you have a rough day and need to talk, a real friend doesn't check their calendar first for availability. When you experience a struggle in trying to learn something new, an effective coach or teacher doesn't assess the rest of the team or the class first to validate your experience. And when you turn to mom and dad with something important, your parent doesn't first evaluate the family bank account to see if your need is fiscally sensible. So why does it seem like the needs of individuals in the workplace consistently represent a lower priority than the needs of the business? It doesn't have to be that way. How we feel and how we are made to feel matters. It matters big time. People who are made to feel great will not only perform at higher levels, they will go on to make other people feel great, which in turn produces more performance growth. What leaders wouldn't want that? There's no riddle or mystery here. It pays to take care of the people who take care of your business. And we're not talking about having pizza on Fridays, although who doesn't love a good pizza? The craziest part is making people feel great doesn't cut into the resources that the company needs. Leaders need only to be more intentional about norms and culture, agree upon what behaviors really matter, and then put people first when they lead. It's about clarity and about communication. Collectively, we call this organizational health. And for the next 30 to 40 minutes, the two Chris's are here to talk about the importance of healthy leadership. Yes, indeed, the two Chris's. I guess I can start. So I am Chris Smith, and I originally hailed from New York. I always wanted to say that I hailed from somewhere. So I hailed from Long Island, New York.
Yeah, and I'm the other Chris. I'm Chris O'Connor, and I'm from Boston. And amazingly, the two of us really get along real well, even though we do have that rivalry going. So why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself, Chris?
Yeah, certainly. So maybe it was the 4 years I spent in your state. So I did my undergraduate at Williams College out in the western part of Massachusetts before Mr. Smith went down to Washington and attended UVA and then Georgetown. Professionally, for the better part of now 23 years, I have been educated at some of the largest professional service firms in the world, leading initiatives related to organizational change, culture, and leadership development. In my spare time, I have been a soccer coach for almost 18 years, and it is pretty incredible how much you can learn about people and organizational health through the eyes of 10-year-old soccer players. Um, so how about you, Chris?
Yeah, so that's one of the common ties that we have is soccer. I've coached soccer with my daughter for the better part of 10 years, nowhere near the qualifications that Chris has, but I have to agree with him on the lessons that we can learn that we can bring to business and to different organizations. So, interestingly enough, while Chris is from New York and went to school in Massachusetts, I grew up in Massachusetts and I ended up going to school in New York at the United States Military Academy at West Point. And I got to spend 10 years in the Army after that and learned some great lessons there too. I was fortunate enough to go to the same program as Chris at Georgetown. I've been doing a lot of the same things that Chris did. We met at these large consulting firms, did change management, organizational development, project management, things like that. And for the last, 10 plus years or so, working in the intelligence community and Department of Defense primarily, but there's some great lessons to be learned from there.
Absolutely, sir. And I think if folks would like to learn a little bit more about us, we can share our LinkedIn profiles, or you can connect with us at changesmithusa.com.
So, Chris, maybe we should offer some more context here. So, why does any of this stuff that we're talking about, this organizational health, matter?
And I mean, we were those employees who were so desperate for that remarkable experience, right? And I mean, I knew what I was missing, right? When I was in college, I was fortunate enough to get to play soccer, and my team at Williams was this. We just had such a special experience, right? The trust that was there between the players, between the coaches, among the captains and the senior players on the team, right? Everybody was really in a position to understand what it was that we were trying to do. And we had this purpose that was just so clear for us. Just a few days before the start of our 1995 season, our senior captain was given a terrible medical diagnosis and was not able to participate in the season, right? And so from right then and there, we said, you know what? We are going to play this year for our brother, right? And we are not going to lose a game playing every match for him. And as we rolled through that season, we won a couple of games early on, kept winning games. We would struggle in some matches, but still managed to pull off a victory. And it got to the point where all of a sudden we're in the national championship game, the last game of the NCAA tournament. And throughout that entire experience, there was no issues with, any of the just the nonsense that goes on amongst players, right? Like none of the ticky-tacky stuff, everybody, tackling hard in training, holding each other accountable. Yes, there was some, screaming and yelling at each other, but at the end of the day, we knew that it was all coming from a place that was going to get us towards our purpose, which was to win for our brother. And gosh, when we won that last match and he lifted that national championship trophy, it was just that was it, right? And so my bar is pretty high for what a remarkable experience should be and what a team should be. And I know that you've got some stories that are right there as well. Do you want to share one with us?
So, Chris, yeah, definitely I have some experiences. Listening to you, one thing that stands out to me is the clarity of purpose that you and your teammates had during that year. So it kind of makes me think of a very special experience I had in the Army. As a young second lieutenant just out of West Point, showing up at Fort Bragg, we got to do this thing called cohort, where we took a group of young soldiers who all came into basic training together, went through advanced training, and we had NCOs and officers who were part of that. And we spent the better part of a year training them up how to be combat soldiers, how to fight in battle, and to win America's battles out there on the battlefield. And it was interesting because we went through all of that, spent the better part of 1990 out there in the training facilities at Fort Bragg, and finally finished up in late July, early August, and got our certification. And these guys were combat ready, and little did we know that right after that, combat ready would mean something totally different than we ever expected. A guy named Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. We all got calls. We had to rush back to Fort Bragg, jump on an airplane, and we were over in Saudi Arabia within 3 days. And we sat there for 2 days in near the shore of Saudi Arabia, and then we immediately headed out to the western flank to protect the western flank of the U.S. troops and the Saudis from the Iraqi forces that were out there. But never once did we falter as we were over there, and we went through Desert Shield, Desert Storm, fought the battle. We're fortunate enough to fight with the French out on the western flank, but never once did we falter because we had a common sense of purpose. We had that clarity that everybody needed. We had a goal that we're all going after, and we can be proud that we went over there, we did our thing, did it really well, won the battle, and never lost anybody to injury, to any type of problems or anything. Everybody that we brought over, we brought back at the end, and we all came back together to fight another day. And, it's just one of those great things that really stand out in my life that really echoes what you were saying about the soccer team. Thinking about those two stories we just told, and the fact that we met at one of the largest and best professional services companies in the world, I think it's fair to say that we both had very high expectations of what we were going to get when we worked at those companies. Don't you think?
You know what? I'll tell you what's high is, the goosebumps that I get when you tell that story, man. Thank you so much for your service. Man, it's just cool to listen to. Yeah, I mean, I think we certainly had high expectations, right? I mean, we really enjoyed our time there. I think we worked for a guy that we really liked and who we thought a lot of and continue to think a lot of. But gosh, I mean, so many of our client interactions just felt handcuffed, right? We were this highly respected firm, and most of our clients were senior executives, but our work was governed by contracts and structure, right? We weren't really trusted to improve the professional experience for our client leaders or their people, right? We were held accountable for creating profit and revenue for the firm, and those were the things that always came first.
Yeah, kind of like taking one for the team, huh?
Only one?
Yeah, I was trying to be nice,
I mean, jokes aside, right? I mean, I think as we grew through the ranks and advanced in our discipline of choice, right, which was organizational change management, we realized that there was so much more we could do for the people in those organizations. And we knew that it wasn't just to help those people, it would help our client leaders and their organizations. But that wasn't really the way that our firm wanted it at the time.
No, that's right. Ultimately, I think we both needed to leave and find a better way to help those people that we're working with. And our focus was on helping the leaders to help those people. That's the key thing, leaders helping the people have that remarkable experience, and not at the expense of the business, but actually to explicitly improve the business and make it better. I'm sitting here now trying to think of a good story that we could tell. Can you think of any organizations that we know of that could help tell that story?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I wish there was more of them, right? The truth is that there probably aren't enough healthy leaders out there. And, I suppose we could share some of our experiences with, the clients that we've been proud to serve at ChangeSmith. But, before that, maybe there's an example that we can share from, an organization with whom we've had some exciting interactions, but haven't really, provided any formal services. You think we need a hint? Ladies and gentlemen, please return your tables to their full and upright locked positions.
That could only be one organization that I know of.
That's right. When you combine a warrior spirit, a servant's heart, and a fun-loving attitude with a fleet of 737s offering exclusively first-class seating, the result is the only major airline never to go to bankruptcy court. Southwest Airlines is ruthlessly focused on these three things. When they measure something, they measure it in terms of these three things. When they think about how anybody in the organization is performing, they talk about their behaviors related to these three things. And if they discuss doing something that is strategically new or different, they evaluate their ideas based upon how they advance these three things. For something as complex as running a major airline, that seems pretty simple, almost too simple. Do you think it works?
You know, I really do. I've actually seen it work. We've seen it work. Last year, we were flying back from a conference where we went to learn more about organizational health from Pat Lencioni, a thought leader in the area. And we're fortunate enough to be flying back from Dallas to DC on Southwest Airlines. Go figure, you know? Interestingly, before that, though, while we're at the conference, we heard the whole story of Southwest Airlines, and we're fortunate enough to meet their chief training officer while we were there and gain some insights from her. And she was just an amazing person. But, you know, back to the plane, though. So it's a long flight from Dallas back to DC, you know, and you got to get up every so often. So I get up at one point, went to the back of the airplane. And on my way back, I saw that there were two flight attendants at the back of the plane in the galley area. And I figured, you know, I'm not really shy. So I turned around and I said, hey, what the heck? Let me try this, because this can't be true. Everything we heard couldn't be true. Come on, Chris, you know that. I mean, we've heard it a million times. Do they talk the talk and walk the walk? So I was going to find out for myself. And, you know, why not? It's a long flight. So I asked the flight attendants, you know, we just heard all this from Southwest, from the leadership. You know, leaders say a lot of things, but, you know, I want to know for real, is this really what it's like? Are they telling us the truth, or is this all just a sales gig? And you know what? For the next 30 minutes, I sat back there with them, and they told me amazing stories that they had that made their lives better and make them want to be part of Southwest Airlines. And interestingly, one of the flight attendants that were standing there, she came to Southwest Airlines 13 years prior, and it was going to be a bridge job for her in between jobs. She figured she'd be there for a year. 13 years later, she can't think of anywhere else she'd rather work. And this isn't by mistake, all this is happening. It's a conscious effort by leadership to make the experience of their people truly remarkable, so that they can give the remarkable experience to their customers. I mean, think about it. How many of us have flown on Southwest, and it's just a blast? I mean, we all have fun on Southwest, you know?
So I wonder if people are ready to learn more about organizational health.
Yeah, I bet they are. I think we got them started, and I think we should go into explaining what organizational health is and let them understand that a little bit here.
All right. Well, I'll see what I can do. Just don't make me sing anymore.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm not gonna.
All right, Chris, let's give them what they came for. I think we've teased everybody enough. People came here to learn about organizational health. So organizational health as a concept has really been driven by two thought leaders. First, McKinsey & Company, and second, Patrick Lencioni at the Table Group. So here's what the good folks at McKinsey have to say. The health of an organization is based on its ability to align around a clear vision, strategy, and culture, to execute with excellence, and to renew the organization's focus over time by responding to what people need. So the takeaway here is that it's people focused. We're not just talking about executing a strategy. We're talking about a response to an understanding of what people need in that organization. So we've already introduced McKinsey. So now let's talk about Patrick Lencioni, and we'll talk about his model shortly. But what he did was very savvy. He took what everybody already knew about business and collectively sort of bundled those as smart behaviors. And then he talked about these other behaviors that we've been talking about and thinking about, and he called those healthy, right? Now, SMART refers to the strategy, the planning, the financial, IT, logistics, HR, all of those kind of blocking and tackling skills through which you really won't be successful in business without. However, there also isn't a whole lot of space here for differentiation, right? Companies that did things like the assembly line or took advantage of the internet, currently there aren't any obvious or at least sustainable advantages to be gained by the application of smart behaviors. The best way to think about smart behaviors is really as maybe price of admission, and it's worth knowing that most of your competitors are paying that price as well. On the other side of the coin, we begin to consider healthy behaviors. These are those behaviors that make you think about organizations like Southwest, maybe like Patagonia, maybe like Apple, right? These are the parts of the business related to confusion in politics, where we want those things to be low, right? Morale and productivity, which we want to be high. Employee turnover, which we want to be low, and trust, which we want to be high. Right? These are things that are really guided by principles and by purpose that are prioritized oftentimes above profits. There are not nearly enough organizations that do this well. So let's take a little bit of a deeper dive and look at it a little bit further into Lencioni's model. So the first facet of the model suggests that leaders must be cohesive in 5 fundamental ways. The first of these is building trust. And that's not as simple as, hey, you trust me, I trust you. It's really a vulnerability-based trust, right? It has to be the type of trust where you can go to somebody and say, you know what, you do this better than I do. And so we're going to ask you to do it instead of my doing it, right? The next is mastering conflict. And sometimes conflict seems like it's a 4-letter word, but it really isn't. True teams need to have conflict in order to advance, in order to get better, in order to grow together. The next is commitment. And this is not the type of commitment where 3 or 4 people, go into a room and have a meeting and they come out and disagree and they say, well, we made a decision, but, so-and-so said that we're going to do things this way. And when it fails, you'll know that I didn't agree with it. It's really being able to work through a process, making a decision as a team, and then being committed to what that decision is moving forward as a team. The next piece is around accountability. And when we talk about accountability, it's really will you do what you say? But when we talk about what you do, we're not talking about necessarily measurables. We're talking about behaviors. It is, will the team and the members of the team commit to the behaviors that the team has identified as necessary for the success of the organization or the initiative or whatever is going on? And will the people on that team hold each other accountable for those behaviors? And finally, there needs to be a focus on results. Now, the results should be pre-understood, right? The team should have gathered and understood what those results should be, and then the focus should be on whether or not those results are being achieved. It should allow for that question whenever any important decision comes up to be able to say, does this help us advance towards those results? If so, then we do it. If not, then we really have to have another conversation about what really makes the most sense. After we have a cohesive leadership team in place, the next thing we do is we create clarity. And this whole model is about cohesion and clarity. And when we talk about clarity, we aim to answer 6 simple but powerful questions that helps leaders to be intellectually and unambiguously aligned and committed. These questions are, why do we exist? And this is all about purpose. How do we behave? These are the specific behaviors that will characterize our organization and our approach towards all of our initiatives and our goals. The next is, what do we do? This is really the simplest question, but can be a roadblock sometimes for organizations that don't really understand what it is that they do. The next is, how will we succeed, right? This includes, what do we need to do to meet our goals, right? Our operational goals, but also around the behaviors that are required as we help our organization to be more cohesive and to drive more clarity through that organization. The next is, what is most important right now? What is that next big thing that everybody in the organization should be thinking about in order to help us achieve our goals? And the last, who must do what, really dictates roles and responsibilities so people understand how they fit into what we're doing and what is going to make them successful individually within the team. In the next part, we over-communicate clarity, where leaders communicate the answers to those 6 questions clearly, repeatedly, and enthusiastically. In the last step, we reinforce clarity. For this, we refer to the most senior leaders as CROs, the Chief Reminding Officers. These leaders must establish sustainable policies, programs, and activities designed to remind employees what is really most important for the organization.
So, Chris, what does this really mean for providers of aging services, kind of like the audience we have here today at the conference?
Yeah, I mean, every LeadingAge member, every service provider here has more than enough smart to run its business, right? Where they might have an opportunity is with things and behaviors that are healthy, right? I have to imagine that families faced with a stressful decision, will all have done the research about whether this provider or that provider can deliver the standard of care. But what I'd really like to know is whether or not my loved one will have a healthy experience.
Yeah, it's kind of like I said earlier. For leaders to focus on each and every customer would be like boiling the ocean. Rather, leaders can control the way that themselves and their leadership teams can engage the staff to enable a healthy, remarkable experience. So the staff in turn can provide such an experience to their customers. Are there instances where we've done that?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it as well, right, Chris? I mean, but it isn't easy. As simple as it is to share the philosophy and the methodologies, health demands intention and it demands discipline. Otherwise, it's like a diet where you make all the progress, but then go back to the bad habits. Now, I remember with an early ChangeSmith client, like we had commitments and change and culture, but we didn't have the leadership on board.
So what happened with that one?
Well, I stopped the project.
What? Wait a minute. What? You did what?
Well, I took the leaders aside and I told them, look, if they weren't committed to sustaining healthy behaviors, it wouldn't be fair to their people to tease them with organizational health, that it would simply be better to just continue as they were, right? We'd started to build this health-related infrastructure and people were starting to get excited. We even had this local artist come in and produce these amazing graphics with like stylized images of their logo and artistic renditions of our local Washington, D.C. in the background, featuring some of their organizational norms and the values that their teams had developed through these focus groups that we facilitated. But as soon as we saw that the leaders were just conducting business as usual, it was like the air coming out of a balloon. It was as if we'd been on a crash diet and then went straight back to eating junk food. There was just no sustainability.
Yeah, I think we can all identify with that. So what happened next?
Well, we learned we had to get the leaders on board early, right? At least earlier. It was never enough to just architect the change, right? We had to be in a position to influence the environment in which people would experience the change, that pivot towards health. And we needed the leaders on board from that, not just on board, but out front, driving the cohesion and the clarity. Now, I remember one of our recent client experiences where this happened just about the way that we hoped. Would you be willing to share a little bit about that engagement?
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely can. This is one of my favorite ones that we've worked on.
So with what problem did this client come to ChangeSmith?
So let me see if I can put this together for you real quick. Anyway, it was a local high school in the area that we're somewhat connected with. And they came to us with a problem because they were losing teachers and students over the past couple of years. And they had some preconceived notions about what was going on. They felt that potentially it was they weren't paying their teachers enough. The kids could go to other schools, pay more money and get a better experience at another school or get higher grades or higher SAT scores, and we got in there and we actually had the opportunity to run a very large survey where we asked some deep questions trying to get to the root of the problem. And then we get to talk to probably 20 to 30 of the staff and faculty members and try to understand what they were going through and what they were feeling. And actually had the opportunity to talk to some of the former staff that were there and left and what their reasons were for leaving. So we found out some really interesting things by going through all that.
And was that the real problem?
The real problem being not paying them enough, or, you know, the typical Northern Virginia, if you pay for it, you can get it. Well, no, actually, it wasn't. You know, we get in there and we started figuring out that they were kind of glossing over the real problem. The real problem was with the organizational health. This is a thing every leader talks about, you know, but they really practice it. You know, we talk to leadership in the school and they'd say, oh, no, no, we do those things, you know, and we talk to the teachers and former teachers and they'd be like, well, no, actually, we didn't. We talked about it, but never did it. So, you know, it's organizational health isn't a framework. It isn't a, you know, a way of talking. It's a way of life. I think you and I both kind of live organizational health, both professionally and personally in our families, because you can see the parallels between them. But healthy leaders, you know, just simply have advantages that others don't. And it's been proven time and time again.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that. How did you assess that that was the case?
You know, it was pretty easy, actually. As we get talking to people, you could see that the leaders were treating certain people one way and certain people the other way. And there was a division within the school, and there was very little cohesion and clear purpose of what they're trying to do.
So what did we help them to do?
So, you know, we actually had the opportunity. It was fortunate. They were changing heads of schools at that point. So the top leader in the school was changing. So we actually had a chance to give him an opportunity to start fresh. So we gave him the idea of trying to provide clarity through work, make sure everybody was on the same sheet of music and that they were doing it for the right reasons, you know, and we finally got them to understand that it wasn't about test scores. It wasn't about, you know, money. It was about the students. It was about giving the right environment for the staff and faculty to truly provide that remarkable experience for the students so they could succeed both here and later on in life.
It's interesting talking about the staff being on the same sheet of music, right? It seems like you had staff who were maybe on two different sides. Did you find that even though they were on two different sides, that, you know, at heart, they were all sort of committed to the same outcome?
Yeah, I think they truly wanted to do the right thing. And it was just a matter of, it wasn't the what they wanted to do, it was the how that they wanted to do it. And there was no agreement on the how. So, you know, it really kind of messed things up at times and caused for an environment that was really unhealthy and really caused people not to want to be there.
Yeah. So when you're finding that consistency between, you know, what they wanted to do, so did you come up with a healthy solution for the students?
Well, you know, actually, we didn't. We really tried hard. We focused on the staff and the leadership. You know, we understood the student solution wouldn't be sustainable because the students, like patients in a care facility, are transient in nature, and that's part of the business. So they come and go. We help the leaders to understand that by driving healthy behaviors through the staff, healthy staff would enable a better experience for the students, which of course would be core to the purpose of any educational type of experience.
Gosh, that's pretty cool. That's not, I think that's not what the obvious answer would be to most folks, right? Well, gosh, okay. So what did you learn through that experience?
So we learned a couple things actually that really helped us help others after this. We learned that there and through other client engagements, organizational health is really business agnostic. You know, you can go with a school, a IT business, a nonprofit, anybody, and the idea of organizational health is the same depending on whatever they do, because it's the healthy side versus the smart side. You know, the smart side is what changes, the healthy side stays consistent. So, you know, if a business and services include people engagement, healthier is better. You know, and the people we're talking to here at LeadingAge actually are in the people business. So I think they can probably identify with this. The second one is that it's hard to influence the experience for large groups of customers or even staff. You can, however, effectively engage a small group, just as we did there with a small group of teachers, who could then be instrumental through which you influence the rest of the school. So you kind of build a wave for it. You get people to understand, and you have this small group, and then people are like, hey, wait, they're doing things that I'm not doing. And it starts building, and all of a sudden, instead of talking it, or the people that are on the wave are talking it, they start hearing other people talking it. And all of a sudden, the head of school sees things actually raise across the board in the student experience, and you have happier students, more engaged teachers, and more success as you go through it.
Wow. So it seems like the healthiest organizations are both healthy and smart.
Oh, without a doubt, they are. You know, we can sit here and talk all day about the smartest companies like we did earlier, but if they're unhealthy, they don't really do well. If I were to default one way or the other, I'd rather have a healthy organization that didn't have as much talent, because I think they'll raise their level, they'll raise the bar. Whereas a smart but unhealthy company would probably just kind of leave the bar where it is and be content with status quo.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I mean, just listening to you and then thinking about my own recollections from that work, would it be okay if I added one more takeaway?
Oh, without a doubt, yeah, because you were sitting right there with me, and we actually had a really good time doing this. But yeah, definitely, that was the great part. We'd see things from different views. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my favorites. And I think that maybe this was a little bit more clear at a school, right? But my takeaway was, not prioritizing the conventional business results over the remarkable people experience, right? I mean, if I can feel like I'm helping healthy leaders to change the game, then I feel like I'm making a lot more of an impact than, say, if I can save them a little bit of money, right? It's almost like the parent who worries so much about the child's future that they actually miss the kid growing up, right? Taking care of people is the business.
Yep, definitely. And I think you and I live that also, like we say, living it with our kids. We always make sure that we don't miss that experience and trying to make the experience good for them so that they can succeed.
So where do we go from here?
Why don't we talk about how this applies and helps and what it means for the LeadingAge membership?
Yeah.
Whereas being smart's one side of the coin, the participants in our session have learned about the other side, being healthy. LeadingAge member leaders are experts in smart stuff. Never going to question that. Delivering housing, healthcare, and support to older adults. Our goal was to examine also being healthy. When people have a remarkable experience, prioritize the experience that they deliver. Things like collaboration, empathy, and innovation even make more sense. Think about that for a moment. People who work in those predominantly healthy conditions consistently produce better outcomes than people who don't. And I think you can probably even hit more on that, Chris.
Yeah, I love it, man. I mean, there are outcomes, right? Let's consider some facts, right? Healthy companies are generating total returns to shareholders 3 times higher than those of unhealthy ones. Companies consistently outperforming their peers are generally following patterns that have a strong correlation with health, operational success, and financial performance. Companies that can eschew the common but too often disappointing approach of seeking to improve corporate health by closing every benchmark and best practice gap can favor a more tailored set of healthy initiatives that combine efforts to stamp out broken practices while building signature strengths and increase the probability of building a healthy organization by a factor of 5 to 10. Now, some of you might listen to this and it might sound like blah, 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 or even the wah teacher from Charlie Brown and the Peanuts gang. And some of you might even be thinking, wow, that sounds smart. But now you want to know about healthy. So what does organizational health mean as a force multiplier for aging adults experiencing care in your organizations? And for the professionals delivering that care, whose leaders might like for them to be more collaborative, more empathetic, and more innovative?
Chris, let's just really call it what it is. This is a fundamental shift in the service paradigm and professionals who deliver this care, the aging adults who experience the care, and the families who pay for the care that will benefit. Everybody wins. It's a win-win for everybody. Imagine the team delivering your services with minimal politics and confusion, high productivity, low turnover. Think about that for a minute. And an overwhelmingly positive morale. This is what it means to be healthy. We all know it's easy to do the things that we love, very easy to do that. Think about all the advantages your organization can realize when the team delivering your services have that same passion and it isn't hard or expensive.
And even if you had to invest, here's why you would. Healthy companies get smarter over time. They make better decisions over time. They have more loyal customers over time, and they deploy a higher performing workforce over time. On the flip side, unhealthy companies get dumber. Okay, that's an exaggeration. But what really happens is that their best people leave. Those people seek healthier options. Unhealthy companies experience decision-making that gets increasingly centralized, exposed only to the perspective of yes men and yes women. Customers can sense that lack of health, and they will seek alternatives. Finally, the modern employee is just not interested in the decades-long job and the gold-plated watch. So while some executives grew up and even flourished in that paradigm, they will lose the talent race in today's world for the best performing employees. If you want to be sustainable, if you want to be around for a while, health matters.
Yeah, no doubt, Chris. If you went to, let me make this parallel. If you went to the doctor and said, I want to be healthier, he or she would tell you the same thing. Eat right, exercise more, and get some rest. I personally heard that recently. This works for organizational health too, and represents three things you can do today. Everybody here in this conference can do today to advance health in your organization. Number one, eat right. That means clarify and consume your shared purpose. Exercise, identify, communicate, and practice sensible, agreed upon behaviors. And third, rest. Prioritize the time away from conducting the business and to feed the culture and enable that remarkable experience. That probably is the most important of the three right there.
Yes, I would agree strongly. Not enough leaders are taking time away from running the business to step aside and figure out how the business could be better, right? But it seems like the guidance that you just offered is maybe directed at leaders, right? What happens if you're not a leader?
That's a good point. If you're not a leader, be humble, but yet assertive. If you like what you've heard today, be an advocate. Step up, say something about it. Advocate for the families seeking the healthiest options for their loved ones. Advocate for the employees across your enterprise. Advocate for the leaders themselves, who in most cases truly want to be better. And last but not least, advocate for yourself.
Yeah, I think when our leaders put people first, they are taking care of the people who are taking care of the people for whom we do our noble work. There may be some irony in suggesting that people who are taking care of aging people also need to be taken care of, but that is precisely what we are suggesting. If COVID-19 has taught us anything, we want the comfort of knowing that our aging loved ones are not simply put in a place that does healthy things. We want to be sure that their caregivers are thinking and feeling healthy things too.
Yeah, Chris, I think that really sums it up very well. And, I know you know that we enjoy this. We love doing this kind of thing. And I just want to thank you for, having this conversation and that we could share this conversation with this group of people that we're presenting to. So, one thing that I just want to put back to the audience is thanks, be healthy. And I promise you, you're glad you did.
My brother, I wouldn't want to do this with anybody else. Thanks to LeadingAge for having us, and to all of the audience. Stay healthy, my friends.